everybody, and welcome to another episode of My Edtech Life. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Saturday morning, wherever in the world you may be, whether you're having breakfast, lunch, dinner, or maybe it's already Sunday. Thank you so much for joining us here online, and we welcome everybody here in the comments. Join us on YouTube, on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, and we're always excited to take your comments and take your questions. And thank you, as always, for your support. And I'm really excited today. I mean, if you all have been following me this week, it has been an amazing week full of amazing guests, great conversations. It has, sometimes it's when those things, the stars line up, I guess, and everything is great. Was able to get 4 amazing guests this week. And today is our 4th guest, Mr. Steve Martinez, who I am excited to have here on the show. And just a great story, just an overall amazing gentleman who has a passion for education, a passion for learning, a passion for innovation. So I'm just excited to get down to having a great conversation. And like you saw in the Twitter post earlier, Steve's going to help you level up today with our conversation. So I'm really excited about that. Thank you, Scott, for joining us. Also, he's already in the chat. He's here early in the morning. So Scott, thank you so much for joining us. Steve, how are you, man? Like I've been looking forward this whole week to speaking with you and just ending this great week with you with an amazing conversation and just to hear your story. So thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you, man.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I see not just this week, but just in general, like the amount of voices that you have that are extremely talented and powerful. So I'm just honored to be included, and thank you for the invite, and thanks for all the hard work you do. Like you are grinding these out. You're very active with the podcast as well as like your social media presence, and just that additional voice for support for educators and everyone in that education and ed tech space. So we all appreciate the work that you do, Fonz.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it, Steve. Thank you so much for that. Really it makes
Yeah.
my day. And like I said, Saturday mornings are my jam, and this whole week is great. And like I said, I'm just excited. And so, Steve, just in case anybody is joining us right now live, for viewers that may not be familiar with your work yet and what it is that you do, please give us a little bit of brief introduction and what your context and education is.
Yeah, so I'm a social science teacher from California. I currently teach government economics at the senior level and then world history at the sophomore level. I have my master's in curriculum and instruction. When I did that, the focus was edtech. My thesis was on flipped classroom, which was huge in the sense of digging deeper into that blended learning, into that flip model. And so as I flip my classroom, I'm really big into customizing and personalizing that instruction for students in the room. So collecting all that data, collecting those analytics, and knowing exactly what they know or what they may not know before they even enter the room, and then leveraging that space to meet the students where they're at, to build conferences with them, meeting one-to-one, supporting them socially and emotionally. And then I also leverage that time to build a culture of project-based learning where students are exploring their own passions, their own interests, and getting them involved in the community by leveraging the content, by leveraging technology, but placing the problems they care about first. And so with all that in mind, that's roughly what I'm about in terms of what I do in the classroom. I'm passionate about both the flip model and the PBL. And I'm a firm believer that I believe that both deserve to be right next to each other. And I'm not the first one to say that. And I've heard that, especially after COVID. Like I think a lot of people recognize, like, wow, like this flip thing, we were kind of, online a lot, and really utilizing the PBL piece of it. Like, wow, like now that we have all this extra class space, this extra class time, and not that stand and deliver, right? And the way things used to be. And so for me, it's all about like using that space, using that class time to provide authentic learning experiences for students.
That's great. And you've hit on so many things that we're definitely going to kind of go into, because that seemed to be the common theme this week. And I mean, this isn't anything that was planned. It just seemed that every guest that I've had this week, and you yourself also, have just reiterated the importance of PBL. And of course, you're introducing also the flipped model, or talking about the flipped model, and that seemed to have been the conversation this week. And so I just really am excited because I've had so many different perspectives, and everybody, up until now, has been in agreement as far as, the possibilities of PBL and also the flip model. And I myself, have experienced that, and I see the engagement. I see how students get excited, and especially with PBL, with hands on. And I think that you hit on something that I really love, is allowing students to find something they're passionate about and really dig in deeper, leveraging the tech that we have, to be used as an instrument to help them hone in their skills on what they're passionate about, and bringing that to light, and the community engagement. And I think that as educators, or as school districts, or as an education, the education landscape as a whole, I think we can do a better job at finding those relationships, and building that community, not within just our classroom, within the school, but even taking it to the level of the city or state, and making those connections. And I think that's so important because, um, my guest, Coral, on Thursday said, a lot of students do not find that connection between A and B if we silo A and B. So, for example, siloing classes, math and science, technology, engineering, it's like, well, no, I'm just a reading teacher, I'm just a math teacher. But if we can actually, within our classrooms, build that cross curricular relationship, and making those connections, and not just saying, hey, this is just science, no, this is just math, but say, hey, these go together because there's tech, there's science, there's math, and all of these components are interdisciplinary. I think that that's where that engagement and that excitement comes in. So thank you so much for doing that with your students. And of course, like you said, everything was data driven, and you were able to personalize the learning and take it to that extra level. So that's really exciting. So thank you for that. So Steve, let's go ahead and kind of go into this, because again, one of my favorite parts of doing this podcast, and really what I'm passionate about too, is this to me is my 45 minutes of personal PD for me, where I get to go to the expert and I get to ask these questions. But I know that everybody will benefit from this. But I'm always curious about the origin story. Like every superhero has an origin story, where they first started from, and so on, and they built up their skills and all of that. What is your origin story? It was education something that you had always intended to go into, or was it something that you kind of fell into?
Yeah, so my story is different in the sense of um like the first time I would consider myself doing any kind of teaching would be from the age of 18. And the reason why I say that is because when I graduated high school, I was really into band, I was really into music. So at the age of 18, I started kind of like a walk-on coach, where I started coaching high school marching bands and drum lines and percussion ensembles. So in high school, I played saxophone, but I was also a snare drummer. And so by just helping out doing stuff, I realized that from an educational standpoint, it's something that I felt I was good enough at, and also something I really enjoyed. And so as I made my way through, I started designing, writing music for ensembles, writing visual packages, so like the movement and a lot of the dance stuff that was involved. I did that for about, I want to say, like 13 years. And while I was doing that, I kind of put college kind of off to the side. I did make good enough money at it to where I was like, hey, I think I can do this for a little bit. But in the process, though, what I did, now that I look back, is I was learning how to manage X amount of students, whether it was 50 or whether it was like 200, like on a football field. So by the time I got to the classroom, like that classroom management piece, I already had a good handle on that. And the other thing too is, again, now looking back, I the thing I enjoyed the most about it wasn't the, like, the music component of it, which I did like. It was competitive, right? And so like at I think back 2010, I did take a group to finals, a percussion ensemble to finals, like nationals, basically, and they were a finalist there. So I did have some, like, pockets of success with it, but I think the big thing that I think I enjoyed the most was like the connections with students, the connections with parents. And so there was another point too where I was a percussion director for a school uh, from Los Gatos in California, and so I was able to build relationships with students. I handled some of their, like, help them with their finances, like, hey, we have to go to a trip, working with parents, working with boosters, working with administrators. And I had not even finished college yet. And so I had like all this experience. And so by the time I, got towards the end of that, I was like, look, I really need to get what we would consider your life together, but I wouldn't trade my experiences for the world. And I spoke with a former student of mine recently where she was talking about how, like, hey, uh, my my family was like, hey, why is it taking you so long to get through college? Or why is it, why aren't you doing like the traditional like 4 years, right? And to me, that's discouraging. And I got that from
Mhm.
my own family too. Like, hey, why aren't you done already? Like, what are you doing? Right. And they didn't say it exactly like that, but that's how it felt to me. And again, going back to the personalization and customization, like when I graduated high school, I wasn't literate. Like I didn't I as much as I was really not I don't want to say really good, but I was good enough at the music thing, I was not reading at grade level. I struggled in math, and I with those core classes, I didn't have the tools to jump into college and do it well, which is why I didn't do it initially. And I was scared of that. And so it when I got into the community college space, I started from like the lowest English, right? The lowest math. And I had to work really, really hard to get proficient at academics. But I that didn't take place until after high school. And so that shaped a lot of how I teach and how I interact with students, especially our at risk, especially our students that feel like I can't do this, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not good enough, right? And so for me, once I entered the classroom with all those experiences in mind, I got my BA in social science, did the credentialing thing, hopped into the classroom, and because of my background with music and the writing, I was good enough at the technology. I was like, oh, I get what all this is trying to do. I managed X amount of students on a football field. I get the classroom management piece. So when people tell me, like, I'm wrapping up my fourth year teaching, when people are like, wow, you've accomplished quite a bit in 4 years. I'm like, well, to be fair, I had a lot of, like, I would consider this my second career, right? It's just a different education space. And so when I entered the classroom, I spent about a year and a half teaching, got started on the MA right away. That helped me a lot, particularly with where I was headed with the flipped classroom. And when I started flipping, I kind of self-taught. I was like, hey, I'm just kind of curious about this. So I started flipping my economic class. And it was crazy because, like, just with me not really knowing too much what I was doing, all of my scores went up like exponentially. And even the kids were like, wow, this is crazy. Like I'm understanding this way more just by doing it in this way, right? Like doing the notes, collecting that data, doing a quick review. I'm like, hey, how are you doing? Right. And doing that brief assessment. And the score started, spiking. And so from there, I got really into project-based learning, and additionally, even into design thinking with my seniors, where students are problem solving using the design thinking process. Um, and so, and now here we are, 4 years into my teaching career, about to leave the classroom, and we can talk a little bit more about that in a bit. Um, but I've found that because of my background, I speak to a broader audience within for my students. Like it's not just, hey, the kids that are already motivated, cool, I can connect with you, right? The students that are like, hey, really struggling, feel like I can connect with you too. The students that have that anxiety, like I did, like where like I felt when I graduated high school, I felt like I couldn't read, I couldn't speak at grade level. Um, I, like I had to work really hard to get literate. And I share this story with my students, and I tell them like, hey, if I can do this, you can do this. If I can make these steps professionally and personally, you certainly can too. And having those meaningful conversations with students has been huge in my classroom and with the families and students that I work with for the last, I would say, 20 years.
It's great, and everything that you said is just so spot on. And I really appreciate you giving us your background and understanding where it is that you're coming from. And one of the main things that I want to say is that, yes, you are absolutely correct in making those connections. You're not able to just connect with, the high level kids, but the kids that are struggling too as well. And even the bubble kids, and, the bubble kids that are right there in the middle that oftentimes we may forget about, like my friend Josh, who's actually here joining us. He's a principal, and he says, oftentimes it's like, the high kids, they're going to be okay. They're self-motivated. Then you've got the kids that are struggling. We can make those connections because we definitely want to lift them up. But then there's that middle kid, the bubble kids that oftentimes are overlooked. But I love the way that you have those conversations and you're open about it. And oftentimes I think that it's just something that in our nature. And what I've noticed too is that a lot of educators that come in from a from industry or from a different, I guess you could say, different background, and not going through the college of education. And I'm not saying anything bad about that, but I'm just saying that we're coming in from industry, business, marketing, or yourself that coming in from that music background. We've seen things different. We've engaged in a different way, and we bring in those sales skills, that personalization, being honest, being open and talking. And because these are the real world skills that we needed in order to be successful in what we were doing prior to getting into the classroom. So it's something that's very important, and that I wish more teachers would take a risk and say that it's okay to be a little bit vulnerable. It's okay to have those conversations because we struggled ourselves, but we shouldn't be, now that we're in the classroom, be like we are the know-it-all, we are that sage on the stage. But make those connections. And I love everything that you said, because if I was in your classroom, I could definitely see myself being successful in that subject area if I'm struggling, or even in anything else, because what you're teaching me, not only through the flipped classroom, but through PBL, is you're teaching me skills that I can transfer into my other classes as well. And that right there, you're building up that capacity, and the students are making those connections, and you're creating a learning experience. And I've always said, and I learned this from Dr. Morris, a learning experience is something that that student of yours is going to take with them forever. It becomes part of them, rather than just the learning where I just memorize, formulas, cities and states, nations, countries, and so on, where that later on, it's hard to sometimes memorize. And we don't even need to memorize things anymore because we've got phones on our fingertips. But the experience, Steve, that you created for those students, that's something that is long lasting, and it's going to go longer even after this year that you've had them, and those students that you've had before, and the students that you will have after. And now, as we're going to kind of talk into about your new role, the teachers that you will be helping. And that is something that's magical and wonderful in what you're doing. And it really excites me, and it really touches me, because it I love it. That reminds me so much of myself being in the classroom, and even right now trying to model that, working with teachers as well. It's great. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I did want to add too That's great that you're a fellow woodwind because I did play saxophone also as well in high school. And I was
Nice.
like, yeah, I was trying to look for a picture here to share with you also as well because I was in a ska band too, playing saxophone.
Oh,
So yeah, so
yeah.
it was pretty cool. And so I'm very familiar with what the work that you were doing. So the management, like you said, you're managing 50 to 100 to 200 depending on how big the band is, and you're managing their movement where they have to move in unison. They all have to march at the same time, at the same tempo, and all of that. And to me, I was like, that is a great transition into classroom. So, I mean, it's great. So, thank you so much. So, now that you told us a little bit here about your background, what it is that you're doing, and really, I hear the passion that you have for education and also the passion to give back because of some of the obstacles and some of those things that you had to overcome, but you've improvised, you've adapted, you've overcome those things. And now the doors have opened up, my friend. You are transitioning, you're still teaching, but you're just going to transition to a different type of teaching. So, if you don't mind sharing with us just some of that great news, I don't know if it's, I'm pretty sure you've posted it up. I don't know if it's, people are already kind of familiar with what is happening, but we'd love to hear what it is that you're going to be up to now.
Yeah, so, because you mentioned, like, "Oh, you're still teaching." I actually wrapped up my last day, Thursday. So Thursday was my last day. I went to graduation. A lot of the students, a lot of my seniors, we've already announced that, that I am leaving the district and the school. So graduation, a couple of them caught me, and it was, not gonna lie, there's a couple tears, for sure, with those seniors, with those students. But the reason being is that I have accepted a full time position at Cami. And yeah, thank you. Uh, and Cami is, I've been collaborating with Cami for a few years now. And I've always told myself, I was like, you know what? I have no intention of leaving the classroom. But the more I got into it, particularly with Edtech, I was like, there's only two companies I would leave the classroom for. Uh, I won't say the other one, but I won't give that away. But Cami was one of them, and not just because of the tool. And I think what Cami, what that looks like in a classroom is powerful in the sense of accessibility, student choice, student voice, how we support students, and then how you can, like, from a design standpoint, like what the possibilities are with Cami. And so that's one part of it. The other part of it is just their general culture. Like, they truly care about people, about students, about teachers. And um, I don't know if anyone out there is going to disagree or what have you, but like, I've not come across a company that listens to teachers the way that Cami does. And even like really early on with my relationship with Cami, where I was just a teacher, and I was like, "Hey, I'm having this issue," or "Hey, what if Cami did this instead of this?" And like, kind of like suggestions. Um, and in fact, like the first time I had a real problem with Cami, someone called my phone. It was the CEO of Cami, or it was one of the CEOs of Cami, Henji. I got on the call with Henji. I was like, I was expecting some sort of like support person or what have you, but the fact that that person, the CEO, is jumping on a call with a teacher to help him with the problem, I thought that was huge. And so, as while I can't talk, too much about the role, it will be supporting teachers and administrators, and it's a lot of training. It's a lot of showing what the product is and what it can do, particularly through my lens, right? Like, what does Cami look like in my classroom? What does it look like in the flip model? What does it look like for feedback and reflection within the project-based learning experience, right? And so while I'm kind of like, man, I'm gonna miss the classroom. I think the thing I'm gonna miss the most, is gonna be those connections with students and helping students. But the way I see it is like, well, I'm gonna be helping students in a different way. right? Spreading my knowledge of Kami and my knowledge of everything I have, you know, helping people better understand what ed tech can look like and how to leverage technology beyond just replacing paper. So that's what I'm excited about. I do start next month, which is super exciting. I think it's going to be a good time. I think it's I'll be working with good people that are encouraging that culture, that company culture of like supporting each other, lifting each other up, and I'm stoked, man. Like I'm super excited to step into this role.
I'm excited for you, and I love what Scott here shares, because we know Scott also transitioned from classroom and now he's doing Canva, and he's here in Texas, so it's great. I got to meet him in person and everything at TCA. But I love what he says here. It says still in education, just expanding your reach. So yes, and that's different, and that's why I said you're going to continue teaching in a different capacity, bringing that knowledge to teachers and that experience. And you know what? I must say, yeah, I've been using Cami since 2016, 2017, and I've had the same experience that you've had where I ran into issues and I had Henji call me, back in the day. And, one of the things is that you're absolutely right. This is one of the companies that I love the most in getting teacher feedback. And more than anything, to me, it's a one-stop shop for tier one, tier two, and even tier three instruction where you can go in deep. And oftentimes it's you're barely scratching the surface on a lot of tools that we have, because you just want that immediacy and so on. But if you dive in deep to what Cami offers in the suite of tools that they have, and I use Cami, my own personal subscription, for right now, currently for my doctoral studies, because of all the reading that I have to do. So I'm reading my articles, I'm highlighting, I'm putting in voice notes, I'm putting in video notes and little clips and doing screencasts. Because then when I come back to that particular article, I already know where it is that I'm going to find what I need to do my research. So Cami goes beyond just K-12. This is a tool that can definitely be used at any grade level and even in any business. And so this has been one of my favorite go-to tools from 2016 all the way even now. And then during pandemic, it was so helpful. So I really am excited for you, Steve, because honestly, everything that you said, I will not disagree with you. And there are many other people that will not disagree with you, that this company is a great company that really takes teacher feedback seriously. And the culture there is just great. They're so nice, so as far as attentive to our needs, and very quickly, they're able to help and troubleshoot and do those things. So I'm really excited for your transition, my friend. It is going to be exciting to see you. Hopefully, you'll be doing the conferences, seeing you there, and hopefully meet in real life and so on. But I'm really excited that you will have a great impact taking your experience in the classroom, what you did so well there. Now, I mean, and it's great. And it works out with the last post that I did on Twitter where I said you're gonna level up with Steve, and really you're helping us all level up because of the experience that you had, as teachers. For those of us that are always willing to learn and always out there looking for that next little tip and that little knowledge nugget, I'm really excited that you're gonna bring that, and you're gonna bring it, with a passion, and that's exciting, Steve. So tell me your just what your first reaction was, when you heard the news, because I'm just always excited to just hear that too as well. What went through your mind when you got that phone call or that message or whatever it was?
Um, it was crazy because it was talking back and forth, like how that goes. But once I knew that, like, okay, this is happening, uh, I had to pinch myself. I was like, there's no way that Cami would give me that kind of shot, right? And it because what Cami does is they kind of, I don't want to say they build you to it, but like they scaffold how they train teachers to be able to get the knowledge that I have. So they have courses, right? So the first time I got started with Cami, like I just did the courses, And then I got accepted into their ambassador program, which is the Kami Hero program. And then I spoke at two Kami Connects. That's that like their virtual
Mhm.
conference. So it wasn't like, sending my resume to this company, like, let's see how it goes. Like that relationship was already established. And that to me is powerful that they're willing to build that rapport with teachers, regardless if they think that they're going to hire them or not. Right. That's just part of that's just who they are. They're so the best way I can put it is they're so human. Like they care about what they're doing beyond just the tool. It goes into the how we're teaching and how we're feeling. And so when I got that call, as you put it, I was just like, there's no way that I'm going to be a part of this cool thing that they're building. And because Cammy's one, like, it's always evolving. I feel like there's so much growth still that they have, and I think they know that, and I think that they're willing to give that shot with me to allow me to be a part of that growth with them. So again, I had to pinch myself. I was on Scott's podcast a week or two ago, and I kind of said the same thing there. I was like, man, I don't believe I get to be working with people at this level, and I just can't believe that I'm given can be given the shot to reach other educators, administrators, directors, right? Going to conferences, right? Like I'm going to be at ISTE next month, and so just again, it's still surreal. I don't think it's set in yet that I'm a out of the classroom, but then B going to be working for a company like Cami.
And that's so exciting and so refreshing. Because a lot of companies are out there, they've got some great tools, and the ones that you do see that are successful, that are really, tug at teachers hearts, and they just get teachers excited. Those are the ones that the way that you describe that human approach, they make those connections, and they treat educators equally. Like, I mean, they they talk to them, they're approachable, they're, just there for them. And I think that not only is something that is important for a company to do, just as we as teachers, we always want to reach out to our students, we want to make sure that we have that connection, we build that community. But like you said, I'm excited for you, my friend. It's that transition, and that's the purpose of this show, is just kind of, how to leverage tech for that professional growth, that personal growth. And you've shared your amazing story, from your origin story to your classroom story, and now how through technology, and most importantly, I mean, it wasn't because just the tech, but because of your skills as a teacher, the way that you set up your classroom, the community, the relationships. Because, like my friend Josh always says, it's like the students have to buy into you first before they buy into anything that you're doing. So it wasn't just because of the PBL, it wasn't just because of the flip classroom, my friend, but in honestly, and talking to you right now, it really seems it's because of your heart, and because of the way that you invest yourself into what you're doing, and always looking to grow and learn. That passion that you have for yourself personally, and then now that goes into what you're bringing into the PBL, you're bringing into the flip classroom, you're bringing in through the use of Cami. That's what makes a difference, and that's why you were able to impact so many students in such a positive way, and helping those students come up. And now the companies, EdTech company, and like Cami, they are, really human centered in that sense. I just want to say that they do care about that, and it just seems like a great fit, a great match, and I am really excited for you and in your next chapter, my friend. This is awesome, and I want to thank you too for coming on the show and sharing this, because to me, it's big news, and what I love to do is I just want to give that platform to some amazing educators to be able to share the goodness, to share the best practices, and that way we could all celebrate each other, and we're here in celebration of you today, my friend. So that's why I've been looking forward to this show this whole week, because today is a celebration for you, and I'm excited for you, my friend.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me. Again, like, just the only other thing I would say is like, going back to your comment about buy-in. Like, I felt I've been pretty successful at getting student buy-in, but I think like that buy-in needs to be like the entire ecosystem of education and ed tech, right? Like you said, helping each other, promoting each other, lifting each other up, and that buy-in of like, hey, you do this cool thing, let me try that out, let me see if that works, right? And Scott and I worked in that way, and so buying into what we're saying, who we are, and the messages that we have in this really cool space.
Excellent, man. Thank you so much, my friend. So, as we wrap up, I always love to ask these last three questions to my guests. And so, here we go. Like Josh is already put it on here, kryptonite time, because he knows this is what he loves. The last part of the show, when he hears everybody's edu kryptonite. So, here we go. So, Steve, in the current state of education, what would you say is your current edu kryptonite?
Hmm. I think that when we have students that are really struggling, and I'm doing like all the things that I think are right, uh, but there's something else there that I can't get to, whether that's mental health, whether that's especially after COVID or remote learning, like that trauma. um, I'm not in their homes with them, right? Like I can't be. I'm a father, but I can't be a father to all these kids, right? And so when I saw my kids struggle on the other side of a computer screen, or even this year when I saw them struggling, like they're going through something heavy. And my students, like the trauma did not end like when we all returned, right, in person. If anything, it's going to continue on. And so some of my students, they went through some serious stuff this year, trying to transition back, um, maybe households that are not ideal. So for me, my kryptonite and where I struggle and where it's really heavy on me is like, especially when, like, I see a kid that reminds me of the stuff that I went through as a kid, right? Like, that hurts me, and these some of these kids are going through or went through and are continuing to go through some serious trauma, some serious stuff, with their parents, with trying to figure out who they are, uh, and sometimes violence, right? And so for me, that is what weighs on me, um, but in the same time, like some of my students went through some serious stuff, and Thursday night I got to see them walk the stage and graduate high school, so it's like a give and take. But yeah, I would say that's mine. Tonight is like, like i
Yeah.
can't I can't reach them in that way because I'm not that figure to them. There's only, I'm not in the homes with them. I can't feed them all the time, right? And so to me, that's what it is.
Thank you so much, Steve, for that honest answer. Just, and again, we can see your heart, and I really appreciate that, man. And it really comes through, you know, because as I don't know, as teachers, I think it's just kind of built into us too. Like we want to make sure that for our kids' well-being too as well. And so thank you so much for sharing that. Next question for you, Steve, is if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Hmm. Um, Probably something along the lines of, like, 'cause we talk about self-care, we talk about mental health, right? I think at least in our space, like at my own school site in my district, like there needs to be some sort of message that, teachers need self-care too, and teachers fall and are struggling just as much as everyone else. I think sometimes the population forgets that, and like parents, students, um, at times administrators, right? Council, like we're all in this together, and we're the ones entering the grades, and we're the ones in the classroom with the kids. But sometimes it is a job where, we don't get a lot of thanks, or even a lot of like, hey, you need to just take care of yourself, because it has felt like there's been more and more placed on our shoulders, especially this year, right? So something along those lines of like, hey, we need that break too. We need that scaffolding too. We need like the supports we give to students. How do teachers get those supports as well?
Ooh, that's good. I like that. Recently I posted something, you know, saying, administrators, I said, right now, you're probably found that one teacher who's always anxious and eager and always goes above and beyond. And the first thing that they're going to want to do is put something else on their plate because it's like, oh, like they can handle it. But this is the time where you need to take care of them and think about what you can take off their plate instead of what to add onto their plate. So yeah, I agree with you. We definitely need those supports as well. That if we're able to give that to students, how can we as educators get those supports as well? So thank you so much. And the last question, Steve, because you never know, after today and after you're transitioning and so on, maybe one day you're going to start a podcast. If you haven't thought about it yet, I completely suggest, hey, just click record, my man. You've got a lot of great things to share. But let's say that today was your show. This is the Steve Martinez show, the podcast, and I am your guest on your show. What would be one question you'd like to ask me as your guest?
Hmm. So I think that, because my understanding is that you're not currently in the classroom, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So for the first thing that comes to mind, just because I'm about to exit, what is the thing that you miss the most about the classroom?
Yeah, great question. The thing that I
So that's
miss
something I
about
would ask.
yeah, the thing that I miss the most about the classroom is exactly everything that you described. When I first came into teaching, never wanted to do it. I fell into teaching and I absolutely loved it. It's the personalization, getting to meet your students and build that relationship. And not only that, but going, even above and beyond to building the relationship with the parents as well and building community with them. Oftentimes, it's the phone calls, believe it or not, those phone calls home do work, where instead of, a lot of parents may expect something bad, but when you say, hey, I just want to let you know that they did awesome today, they did great. And believe me, that power, that little instance can also change the dynamic in the home, because sometimes as teachers, we often have a perception of students, or at least that perception is built where, let's say the previous year teacher says, oh, you're going to have that kid. It's like, well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? You're going to have that kid. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong if you tap into the way that they learn and if you tap into the way that they are engaged. I have no issues with that. But also, even at home, sometimes because of the power of words, and sometimes teachers calling home and your kid did this, your kid did that, your kid did this, and your kid did that. Now the parents think, oh my goodness, what is, is there something wrong with my student, with my kid? Is what's going on? But those phone calls home and praising, I have seen where it has changed not only the student in my classroom, but it also changes the ambiance and just the environment at home as well. So very much like you, Steve, is just pouring my heart out into my students, the kids, reaching them and going above and beyond and helping also, even if I can, the parent, environment at home just by shouting praises about their student, their child, and making those connections. So those are the things that I miss, those relationships. Now that I'm transitioning and I'm working with teachers, I try and do the same thing with them too as well. I've had that experience. I know what it's like being in the classroom. I know what their struggles are. So I kind of relate to them with those struggles. And we build that community, build that communication, that confidence, that psychological safety. And then you introduce and say, hey, here's how I can help you with this. Here is one piece, here's one tool, here's one practice. And my goal, I always tell them, my goal for you is if I can get you 5 to 10 extra minutes in your day to just go to the bathroom or just simply sit in your chair and your desk and just breathe, then this has been a successful training because I don't want to make them feel that I'm adding more to their plate. I want to see if I can take away from their plate and give them more time to breathe. So yeah. But yeah, anyway, going back, that's definitely what I miss in the classroom, those relationships with the kiddos, and the little notes and the excitement that they have when we're doing a lesson. And so yeah, that's really what marked my career. And I was just like, ah, it's so wonderful. So hearing you describe what you were doing with your kids, I was like, man, that is so great. Like I remember that.
It is
So
it is a beautiful thing, like the those connections that I would say that's like the most important part of the job, but
mhm.
it's also the most rewarding.
Yeah, it sure is, man. Well, Steve, man, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here. I know it's early in California. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining me here in Texas, and of course, thank you for joining us here with our live audience. We've got Josh, we've got Scott. Thank you, Mel. I had Dr. Watkins, who is actually one of my professors that joined us on LinkedIn as well. So thank you so much for those of you
Awesome.
that joined. Thank you so much for all the comments and for all our, pretty much all our followers, guys. Thank you so much for making my EdTech life what it is today. As you know, our mission, our passion, and our vision is to connect educators and creators one show at a time by giving them a space where they can go ahead and share and help us all learn from their experiences and move the needle forward and changing the education landscape and how we can go ahead and better our education environment for not only us as teachers but educators. So thank you so much for all of your support. Please make sure you visit our website at myedtech.life, where you can go ahead and check out all our previous guests. You can either watch or view our episodes, and make sure that you also drop us a line. Give us a review, send us a message, give us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you as far as what we can improve, or maybe if there are any guest suggestions. Please feel free to shoot them my way. We'll be more than happy to see what we can do in making those connections and making those shows happen. So thank you so much, as always, for your support. Steve, can you please go ahead and share with our audience members maybe the easiest way for them to connect with you via social media? What would be the best account or accounts?
Yeah, I think Twitter's the best spot. My Twitter handle is Martinez_Edtech. Go and follow me. I try to post, or I try to tweet as much as possible, and I've connected with a lot of teachers in that way, and that's been great for me. It's also been great for my students, and it'll be great moving forward as I enter into the Kami world.
Awesome. And big shout out to Cami. Cami, thank you so much for everything you do. And thank you so much also. I'm so glad that Steve is going to be part of the Cami family, and just keep doing what you're doing because you guys are great. So big shout out to you guys. And as always, my friends, until next time, don't forget, stay techie.